Sarah Martinez looked at the alarm clock on her small kitchen table. It was 5:30 in the morning. She had been awake for 20 minutes already. Her body was tired, but her mind would not let her sleep anymore. This was how most days started for her now. She walked quietly to the bathroom, trying not to wake up Tommy. Her 8-year-old son was still sleeping in the bed they shared in their tiny apartment. Sarah looked at herself in the cracked mirror above the sink. Dark circles sat under her brown eyes. Her black hair was messy from another restless night. At 32 years old, she looked much older. Sarah washed her face with cold water. The hot water had been turned off again yesterday. She had promised the landlord she would pay the bill by Friday. Today was Wednesday. She had 2 days to find the money. She walked back to the kitchen and made coffee with yesterday's grounds. The coffee was weak and bitter, but it was better than nothing. Sarah sat at the small table and looked at the stack of bills next to her cup. Electric bill, water bill, rent notice. Dr. bill from when Tommy had been sick last month. The numbers on each paper seemed to grow bigger every time she looked at them. Next to the bills was her work schedule. She had written it on the back of an old envelope. Coffee shop from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Piano lessons from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Cleaning job from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Sleep from 3 a.m. to 5:30 a.m. Then start again. Sarah knew this was not a real life. This was just surviving. But she had no choice. Tommy needed food. Tommy needed a place to live. Tommy needed his mother to keep going. She heard Tommy moving in the bed. Sarah quickly put the bills in a drawer and smiled. Tommy must never see how worried she was about money. Children should not have to think about such things. "Good morning, baby," Sarah said softly as Tommy sat up and rubbed his eyes. "Morning, Mom," Tommy said. His voice was still sleepy. "Do you have to work today?" "Just for a little while," Sarah lied. She would be working for almost 20 hours today, just like every day. "But I will see you before school and Mrs. Garcia will pick you up after." Tommy nodded. He was used to this routine. Mrs. Garcia lived next door and watched Tommy when Sarah worked. She was kind and never asked for money, even though Sarah knew she should pay her. Sarah made Tommy breakfast with the last of their cereal and milk. She watched him eat and tried to remember when things had been different. It seemed like another life now. 12 years ago, Sarah had been a student at Juilliard. She had won a scholarship to study piano at the famous music school in New York. Her teachers said she had real talent. They said she could have a career as a concert pianist. Sarah had believed them. She had dreamed of playing in beautiful concert halls around the world. But life had other plans. In her 3rd year at school, Sarah met David. He was handsome and charming. He said he loved her music. He said he loved her. When Sarah found out she was pregnant, David promised they would figure it out together. He said they would get married. He said he would help raise the baby. David left 3 weeks before Tommy was born. He said he was not ready to be a father. He said he had his own dreams to follow. Sarah never heard from him again. Without David, Sarah could not finish school. She had no money and no family to help her. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19. She had no brothers or sisters. It was just her and the baby. Sarah had to leave Juilliard and find work. Any work. She cleaned houses and worked in restaurants. She did whatever she could to pay for diapers and formula and rent. The beautiful dream of being a pianist seemed to disappear a little more each day. Now 8 years later, Sarah still played piano, but not in concert halls. She gave lessons to children in her apartment. She had an old upright piano that she had bought from a church for $50. The keys stuck sometimes and it was always a little out of tune. But it was hers. The children who came for lessons were not from rich families. Their parents worked hard jobs like Sarah did. They paid her $10 for 30-minute lessons. It was not much money, but Sarah loved teaching them. When she saw a child learn to play a simple song, she remembered why she had loved music in the first place. "Mom, can you play something?" Tommy asked. He had finished his cereal and was getting dressed for school. Sarah sat at the old piano and played a short piece by Bach. Her fingers moved across the keys like they had their own memory. Even on this broken piano, the music was beautiful. For a few minutes, Sarah forgot about the bills and the jobs and the tiredness. There was only the music. Tommy smiled and clapped when she finished. "I love when you play, Mom." "I love it too, baby," Sarah said. And she meant it. Music was the one thing that still belonged to her, the one thing that nobody could take away. After Tommy left for school, Sarah got ready for her first job. She put on her coffee shop uniform and walked to the bus stop. The morning was cold, and she pulled her thin jacket closer around her body. As the bus drove through the city, Sarah looked out the window at the big buildings and expensive cars. She wondered what it would be like to live without worry, to have enough money, to play piano because she wanted to, not because she needed the $10. But those were just dreams now. Sarah had learned not to dream too much. Dreams could break your heart. She got off the bus and walked into the coffee shop. Another day was beginning. Another day of working and surviving and hoping that somehow things might get better. Sarah did not know that today would be different. She did not know that tonight, when she went to her cleaning job at the fancy hotel, her life would change forever. But that story would have to wait. Right now there were customers to serve and coffee to make. Sarah tied her apron around her waist and began another long day. The Meridian Hotel stood like a palace in the middle of the city. Its windows sparkled with golden light, and doormen in fancy uniforms opened heavy glass doors for guests. Sarah had been cleaning this hotel for 6 months, but she still felt small every time she walked inside. It was 8 o'clock at night. Sarah had finished her shift at the coffee shop and taught 3 piano lessons. Her feet hurt and her back was sore, but she could not rest yet. She had 6 more hours of work ahead of her. Sarah went to the service entrance behind the hotel. This was where the workers came and went. The guests never saw this part of the building. Here there were no fancy carpets or crystal lights, just concrete floors and bright, harsh lighting. "You're late," said Maria, the cleaning supervisor. She was not mean, but she was always stressed. The hotel managers expected everything to be perfect. "Sorry," Sarah said. The bus was slow. Maria handed Sarah her cleaning cart. It was heavy and hard to push. The cart had everything Sarah needed for the night: cleaning supplies, fresh towels, vacuum cleaner, and trash bags. "Start with the lobby," Maria said. "There's some big event ending soon. Lots of rich people. Make sure everything looks perfect." Sarah nodded and pushed her cart toward the elevator. The lobby was on the first floor, but she had to take the service elevator. Cleaning staff were not supposed to use the fancy guest elevators. When Sarah reached the lobby, she stopped and stared. She had cleaned this room many times, but it still took her breath away. The ceiling was 3 stories high, painted with angels and clouds. A huge crystal chandelier hung in the center, sending sparkles of light everywhere. The floor was made of white and gold marble that gleamed like a mirror. Tonight, the lobby was full of people in expensive clothes. The men wore black suits that probably cost more than Sarah made in a month. The women wore long dresses and jewelry that caught the light. They talked and laughed while drinking champagne from crystal glasses. Sarah stayed in the corners, emptying trash cans and wiping tables. The guests did not notice her. To them, she was invisible, just part of the background, like the furniture or the paintings on the walls. Slowly, the crowd began to leave. Sarah watched them walk through the golden doors to waiting cars. Big, shiny cars with drivers who opened doors for them. Sarah wondered what it would feel like to live like that. To never worry about money. To wear beautiful clothes and eat good food whenever you wanted. By 9:30, most of the guests were gone. Sarah began to clean the marble floor with her mop. The work was hard, but she liked the quiet. During the day, the lobby was full of noise and people. At night, it was peaceful. That's when Sarah heard the crying. At first, she thought it was coming from outside. Maybe a car alarm or a siren. But as she listened more carefully, she realized it was a child. A little girl was crying somewhere in the lobby. Sarah looked around and saw her. In the far corner on a velvet sofa near the piano sat a small girl. She looked to be about 6 years old. She had long, light brown hair and was wearing a beautiful white dress with shiny shoes. But her face was red from crying and tears ran down her cheeks. 2 hotel workers stood near the sofa. They looked worried and confused. One was the hotel manager, a tall man in a perfect black suit. The other was a woman who worked at the front desk. They were talking quietly to each other. "Where is her father?" the woman asked. "He said he would be right back," the manager replied. "That was an hour ago. Should we call someone?" "Call who? We don't know anything about her except her name is Emma." Sarah moved closer, pretending to clean a nearby table. She could hear the little girl better now. Emma was not just crying. She was saying something over and over. "Mommy," Emma whispered. "I want my mommy. Where is my mommy?" The hotel workers looked at each other helplessly. They clearly did not know what to do with a crying child. "Sweetheart," the woman from the front desk said carefully. "Your daddy will be back soon. Can you stop crying?" But Emma cried harder. Her small body shook with sobs. She pulled her knees up to her chest and wrapped her arms around them. Sarah's heart hurt watching this little girl. She knew what it felt like to be scared and alone. She remembered being Tommy's age and crying for her parents after they died. She remembered how the world felt too big and too scary. Sarah looked at Emma and saw Tommy. She saw every child who had ever been afraid and needed comfort. Without thinking, Sarah stepped forward. "Excuse me," Sarah said quietly to the hotel workers. They turned and looked at her in surprise. Cleaning staff were not supposed to talk to guests or get involved in hotel business. "I think she might be having a panic attack," Sarah said. "Sometimes children do this when they are very scared or upset." The manager frowned. "We have everything under control," he said coldly. But the woman from the front desk looked interested. "Do you know about children?" she asked. "I have a son," Sarah said, "and I know what helps when children are upset." Emma's crying was getting louder. Other guests in the lobby were starting to notice. Some looked annoyed. Others looked worried. The manager was clearly getting nervous. "What do you suggest?" the woman asked. Sarah looked at Emma, then at the beautiful grand piano that sat near the sofa. It was a Steinway, probably worth more than Sarah's apartment building. She had noticed it many times while cleaning but never dared to touch it. "Music," Sarah said. "Music sometimes helps." The manager shook his head. "Absolutely not. You cannot touch that piano. It's worth more than—" He stopped himself, but Sarah knew what he meant. It was worth more than she would ever have. Emma's crying turned into screaming. She was having trouble breathing between sobs. Other guests were complaining now. The manager looked panicked. "Please," Sarah said. "Just let me try. If it doesn't work, I'll stop." The woman from the front desk looked at the manager. "What harm could it do?" she asked. The manager hesitated. He looked at Emma, then at the complaining guests, then back at Sarah. Finally, he nodded. 5 minutes, he said. "If it doesn't work, you go back to cleaning." Sarah walked slowly toward Emma. The little girl looked up at her with red, swollen eyes. Her face was covered with tears. "Hi, Emma," Sarah said softly. "My name is Sarah. I heard you crying and I thought maybe some music might help you feel better." Emma stared at Sarah but did not answer. "I have a little boy at home," Sarah continued. "Sometimes when he's sad, I play piano for him. Would you like me to play something for you?" Emma nodded just a tiny bit. Sarah walked to the piano bench and sat down. Her hands were shaking. She had not played a piano this beautiful in years, not since her days at Juilliard. She lifted the cover and looked at the keys. They were perfect. White as snow, smooth as silk. Sarah took a deep breath and placed her fingers on the keys. What Sarah did not know was that 3 floors above, a man stood at the window of the hotel restaurant. He had been watching the entire scene. He had been waiting for the right moment to come down and get his daughter. James Richardson had seen the hotel workers trying to help Emma. He had seen them fail. Now he watched this stranger in a cleaning uniform walk to his piano. James held his breath. His daughter had not stopped crying since her mother died 6 months ago. Nothing helped. Not doctors, not medicine, not toys, not trips, nothing. But maybe, just maybe, music would be different. James watched as the cleaning woman placed her hands on the piano keys. He watched as she began to play. And he watched as, for the first time in months, his daughter's crying began to slow. The sound that came from the piano was like magic. It floated through the marble lobby like a gentle breeze. It wrapped around Emma like a warm blanket. And slowly, very slowly, her tears began to stop. The first notes that came from the piano were soft and gentle. Sarah played a piece by Chopin that her mother used to play when she was a little girl. The melody was sad but beautiful, like tears turning into something hopeful. Emma's sobbing began to slow. Her breathing became deeper and calmer. She uncurled her small body from the tight ball she had made and looked toward the piano. Sarah closed her eyes and let the music flow through her. She had not played on such a beautiful instrument in so many years. The sound was rich and pure. Every note rang clear and true. It was like the piano was singing. The melody filled the huge lobby. The sound bounced off the marble walls and the high ceiling. Even the crystal chandelier seemed to sparkle more brightly as the music played. Other people in the lobby stopped what they were doing. Guests who had been walking toward the elevators paused to listen. Hotel workers stopped cleaning and stood still. The beautiful music made everyone want to be quiet and peaceful. Sarah opened her eyes and looked at Emma. The little girl was still crying, but softly now. Her red, swollen eyes were fixed on Sarah's hands as they moved across the keys. Emma wiped her nose with the back of her hand and sniffled. When the Chopin piece ended, Sarah began another song. This one was a lullaby her mother had sung to her. Sarah had played it for Tommy when he was a baby and could not sleep. The melody was simple but sweet, like a gentle hand stroking your hair. Emma stood up from the sofa. On shaky legs, she walked closer to the piano. She was still crying a little, but she was curious now too. She had never seen anyone play piano like this before. "That's pretty," Emma whispered. Her voice was rough from crying. Sarah smiled at her. "Thank you. Do you like music?" Emma nodded. "My mommy used to sing to me." Sarah's heart ached for this little girl. She could hear the sadness in Emma's voice when she talked about her mother. Sarah knew that feeling. She knew what it was like to miss someone so much it hurt. "What was your favorite song that your mommy sang?" Sarah asked gently. Emma thought for a moment. "Twinkle Star," she said quietly. Sarah began to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. But she did not play it like a simple children's song. She played it like a classical piece with beautiful harmony and gentle changes. She made the simple melody sound like something magical. Emma's eyes grew wide. She had never heard her favorite song played like this before. She stopped crying completely and listened with her whole body. More people gathered around the piano. They came quietly, not wanting to disturb the music. Soon there was a small crowd watching Sarah play. Rich guests in expensive clothes stood next to hotel workers in uniforms. For a few minutes it did not matter who had money and who did not. The music made everyone equal. Sarah played song after song. She played classical pieces and lullabies and simple melodies that she made up on the spot. Her fingers moved across the keys like they were dancing. Sometimes she played fast and exciting music that made people smile. Sometimes she played slow, peaceful music that made them feel calm. Emma moved even closer to the piano. Now she stood right next to the bench where Sarah sat. She watched Sarah's hands with wonder. She had never seen anyone play so beautifully. "How do you make it sound like that?" Emma asked. "Practice," Sarah said with a smile. "And love. You have to love the music." "I love music too," Emma said, "but I don't know how to play." "Would you like to try?" Sarah asked. Emma's eyes lit up. She nodded eagerly. Sarah slid over on the piano bench to make room. Emma climbed up and sat next to her. Sarah guided Emma's small finger to middle C on the piano. "Press gently," Sarah said. "Let the key go down slowly." Emma pressed the key. A clear, beautiful note rang out. Emma giggled. It was the first happy sound she had made all evening. "Now try this one," Sarah said, moving Emma's finger to the next key. Emma played note after note, her face bright with joy. Each sound was like a small miracle to her. Sarah helped her play a simple version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with one finger. When Emma played the last note, everyone around the piano clapped. Emma beamed with pride. She looked happier than she had looked all night. "I did it," Emma said. "I played piano." "You did beautifully," Sarah said. "You have a natural feeling for music." Emma hugged Sarah suddenly. Her small arms wrapped around Sarah's waist and she pressed her face against Sarah's uniform. Sarah was surprised but touched. She hugged Emma back gently. "Thank you for making the sad go away," Emma whispered. Sarah felt tears come to her own eyes. "Music has special power," she said. "It can heal hearts that are hurt." The hotel manager looked at his watch. It was almost 10 o'clock. The lobby was supposed to be quiet by now, but he did not want to stop the music. He had never seen anything like this before. This cleaning woman had done something amazing. Sarah began to play another gentle lullaby. Emma leaned against her, finally calm and peaceful. Her eyelids were getting heavy. The music and the crying had made her very tired. Other guests began to leave quietly, but many stayed to listen. They sat in the lobby chairs or stood near the walls. Everyone was quiet and respectful. The music had created something special in the room. Something peaceful and beautiful. Sarah looked around the lobby as she played. She saw the faces of the people listening. Rich and poor, young and old, all brought together by music. This was why she had loved piano in the first place. This was the magic she had felt as a student at Juilliard. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like a real pianist again. Not someone who just gave cheap lessons in a broken-down apartment. Not someone who cleaned toilets and served coffee. A real musician sharing her gift with people who needed it. Emma's breathing became slow and regular. She was falling asleep against Sarah's shoulder. Her little hand rested on Sarah's arm and her face looked peaceful at last. Sarah played more softly now. The music became like a whisper, gentle and comforting. She wanted Emma to feel safe and loved even though they had just met. As Sarah played, she thought about Tommy. He was at home with Mrs. Garcia, probably doing his homework or getting ready for bed. Sarah wished he could see this. She wished he could know that his mother was not just a tired woman who worked all the time. She was someone who could make beautiful music, someone who could help a crying child feel better. The music filled the marble lobby like warm light. It touched everyone who heard it. And somewhere up on the third floor, a man stood at a window watching his daughter finally find peace. Sarah did not know that this man was watching. She did not know that he was Emma's father. She did not know that he was one of the richest men in the city. All Sarah knew was that she was doing what she loved most in the world. She was making music, and that music was healing a little girl's broken heart. The last notes of the lullaby faded away slowly. Emma was asleep now, breathing quietly against Sarah's shoulder. The lobby was silent except for the soft sound of the little girl's breathing. Sarah looked down at Emma's peaceful face and smiled. Tonight music had worked its magic once again. 3 floors above the lobby, James Richardson stood at the large window of the hotel restaurant. His business dinner had ended 30 minutes ago, but he had not gone down to get Emma yet. He had been watching everything that happened below. James was 45 years old and worth $3 billion. He owned Richardson Technologies, one of the biggest computer companies in the world. His photo was on the covers of business magazines. People called him a genius, but right now he felt like a man who knew nothing at all. For 6 months since his wife Catherine died, James had tried everything to help Emma. He had hired the best doctors money could buy: child psychologists, grief counselors, specialists from around the world. He had bought Emma every toy she wanted. He had taken her on expensive trips to Disney World and Paris. Nothing worked. Emma cried every day. She woke up screaming from nightmares. She would not eat. She would not play. She asked for her mother constantly, and James never knew what to say. The worst part was that James was struggling too. He missed Catherine so much that some days he could barely get out of bed. But he had to be strong for Emma. He had to keep working and making money and pretending that everything would be okay. Tonight had been particularly hard. James had to attend this business dinner, but Emma did not want to stay home with the nanny. She had cried and begged to come with him. Finally, James had brought her to the hotel and told her to wait in the lobby while he ate dinner upstairs. He had promised Emma he would only be gone for 1 hour, but the dinner had lasted longer than expected. Important clients wanted to talk about big contracts. James could not just leave. Every minute he stayed upstairs meant millions of dollars for his company. But when James finally finished the dinner and looked down at the lobby, he saw Emma having what looked like a panic attack. His heart sank. He had done it again. He had put work before his daughter, and now she was falling apart. James had started toward the elevator to go help Emma, but then he saw the hotel workers trying to calm her down. They were not doing a good job, but James was curious to see what would happen. Maybe they would succeed where he had failed so many times. Then James saw the cleaning woman approach Emma. At first he was annoyed. Hotel staff were supposed to handle guest problems, not the cleaning crew. But something made him wait and watch. When the cleaning woman sat down at the piano, James was shocked. He knew that piano well. It was his piano. He had donated it to the hotel 5 years ago when they rebuilt the lobby. It was worth $200,000. Very few people were allowed to play that piano. Only famous musicians who performed at the hotel's special events. The hotel manager was very strict about this rule. But somehow, this cleaning woman had convinced them to let her play. James watched her sit down and place her hands on the keys. He expected her to play simple songs, maybe Happy Birthday or Chopsticks. Instead, the most beautiful music James had ever heard began to fill the lobby. James pressed closer to the window. The woman was playing Chopin and she was playing it like a professional. Her technique was perfect. Her touch was gentle but strong. The music was so beautiful that James felt his own eyes fill with tears. But more important than the music was what was happening to Emma. For the first time in 6 months, his daughter stopped crying. She uncurled her body and began to listen. She walked closer to the piano. She looked interested instead of terrified. James could not believe what he was seeing. This stranger, this woman in a cleaning uniform, was doing something that all his money could not buy. She was reaching Emma in a way that no doctor or specialist had been able to do. As James watched, the cleaning woman began to play lullabies. Emma moved even closer to the piano. Soon she was standing right next to the woman, watching her hands move across the keys. James saw Emma's mouth move. She was talking to the woman. This was amazing. Emma had barely spoken to anyone since Catherine died. She certainly had never talked to strangers. Then James saw something that made his heart almost stop. The cleaning woman moved over on the piano bench and let Emma sit next to her. She was teaching Emma to play. Emma was laughing. Actually laughing. James had not heard his daughter laugh in 6 months. He had begun to think he would never hear that sound again. James watched Emma play simple notes on the piano. He watched her face light up with joy. He watched her hug the cleaning woman like she was an old friend. Who was this woman? Where had she learned to play like this? Why was she working as a cleaner when she clearly had incredible musical talent? James took out his phone and called down to the front desk. "This is James Richardson," he said quietly. "I'm watching the situation in the lobby with my daughter. Can you tell me about the woman who is playing piano?" "Oh, Mr. Richardson," the desk clerk said nervously. "I'm so sorry. We should have asked your permission before letting her touch your piano. But your daughter was so upset and nothing else was working." "I'm not angry," James said quickly. "I want to know about the woman." "What's her name?" "I think it's Sarah," the clerk said. "She works for the cleaning company. She's been here about 6 months. Do you know anything else about her?" "Not much, sir. She's very quiet, always does good work, never causes any problems." James hung up and continued watching. Sarah was playing another lullaby now, and Emma was leaning against her. His daughter looked peaceful for the first time since Catherine's funeral. James thought about all the money he had spent trying to help Emma. Thousands of dollars for doctors, tens of thousands for specialists, hundreds of thousands for trips and toys and treatments. And this woman, this Sarah, had helped Emma more in 30 minutes than everyone else combined. She had done it with nothing but music and kindness. James watched Emma fall asleep against Sarah's shoulder. His daughter's face was calm and beautiful. She looked like a normal, happy child again. For the first time in months, James felt hope. Maybe Emma could get better. Maybe there was a way to heal her broken heart. Maybe music was the answer he had been looking for. James also found himself thinking about Sarah. She was clearly talented beyond belief. What was she doing cleaning toilets when she could play like that? There had to be a story there. People with that kind of musical ability did not usually end up working night shifts at hotels. As James watched Sarah play, he began to form a plan. This woman had given his daughter something precious. She had given Emma a moment of peace and happiness. James wanted to give something back. But more than that, James was thinking about Emma's future. What if Sarah could continue to help her? What if music lessons could be part of Emma's healing process? James had learned long ago that everyone had a price. Everyone wanted something. He just had to figure out what Sarah wanted and make her an offer she could not refuse. But he would have to be careful. He could not just walk down to the lobby and throw money at this woman. She might be suspicious of his motives. She might think he was trying to buy her. James needed to approach this slowly and carefully. He needed to earn Sarah's trust before he revealed who he really was and what he could offer her. The music in the lobby grew softer. Emma was definitely asleep now. Soon, Sarah would have to stop playing and get back to her cleaning work. Soon this magical moment would end. But James was already thinking about tomorrow, and the day after that, and all the days to come. For the first time since Catherine died, James Richardson had hope. And it was all because of a cleaning woman who played piano like an angel. James smiled as he watched his daughter sleep peacefully in a stranger's arms. Sometimes the most important gifts came from the most unexpected places. Now he just had to figure out how to make sure this gift lasted forever. James watched from the window as the last soft notes of the lullaby faded away. Emma was sleeping peacefully against Sarah's shoulder, her small face finally calm after months of constant sadness. James felt his throat tighten with emotion. He had been holding back for too long. In the lobby below, hotel security guards began walking toward the piano. James could see them talking to each other and pointing at Sarah. They probably thought she had been playing too long. The hotel had rules about noise after 10 o'clock. James quickly took out his phone and called the hotel manager directly. "This is James Richardson. he said when the manager answered. "I can see security approaching the piano in the lobby. Tell them to back off immediately." "Mr. Richardson," the manager said nervously, "I'm sorry about the disruption. We'll have the cleaning woman stop playing right away." "No," James said firmly. "You will not disturb her. My daughter is sleeping. And that woman is the first person in 6 months who has been able to calm her down. If anyone interrupts this moment, they will be looking for a new job tomorrow." "Yes, sir," the manager said quickly. "I'll tell security to stay back." James hung up and watched the security guards walk away from the piano. Sarah continued to sit quietly, letting Emma sleep against her. She looked tired, but she did not try to move the little girl or wake her up. James thought about his life before Catherine died. Back then, he had believed that money could solve any problem. Need better doctors? Buy them. Want the best schools? Pay for them. Facing a business challenge? Hire the smartest people money could buy. But grief was different. Sadness could not be purchased. Love could not be bought. And a broken heart needed more than expensive treatments to heal. James had spent the last 6 months throwing money at Emma's problems. Private therapists who charged $1,000 per hour. Special medications that cost more than most people made in a year. Trips to healing centers in Switzerland and meditation retreats in Tibet. Emma had sat through all of it like a sad little robot. She answered the doctor's questions with one-word responses. She took the medications without complaining. She went on the expensive trips without smiling. Nothing worked because James had been trying to buy healing instead of understanding what Emma really needed. What Emma needed was simple. She needed to feel connected to something beautiful. She needed to remember that there was still joy in the world. She needed someone to show her that music and laughter and love still existed. Sarah had given Emma all of those things in 30 minutes. For free. James watched Sarah gently stroke Emma's hair as she slept. The cleaning woman's uniform was old and faded. Her shoes had holes in them. James could see that she was poor just by looking at her clothes. But Sarah had something that all of James's money could not buy. She had talent. Real extraordinary talent. The way she played piano was magical. She was clearly trained at the highest level. Someone like that should be performing in concert halls, not cleaning hotel bathrooms. James began to wonder about Sarah's story. How did someone with that much musical ability end up working as a cleaner? What had happened to bring her to this place? Everyone had a story. James had learned that from years of business negotiations. Some people were driven by money. Others wanted power or recognition. Some people had been hurt and needed healing. Others had dreams they had given up on. James suspected that Sarah had dreams she had given up on. People did not learn to play like that unless music meant everything to them. Something must have happened to force her away from her musical career. As James watched, he began to see other details he had missed before. Sarah's hands were calloused from cleaning work, but her fingers moved across the piano keys with perfect technique. Her uniform was cheap, but the way she held herself showed confidence and grace. Her face was tired, but when she played music, she glowed with happiness. This was a woman who was living far below her potential. This was someone who had fallen through the cracks of life, probably through no fault of her own. James thought about Catherine and how she had always cared about people like Sarah. His wife had volunteered at homeless shelters and women's centers. She had believed that everyone deserved a chance to pursue their dreams. "We have so much," Catherine used to say. "We should use our advantages to help people who haven't been as lucky." James had always agreed with Catherine in theory. He donated money to charities and supported good causes, but he had never gotten personally involved with helping individual people. He was too busy building his business empire. Now, watching Sarah cradle his sleeping daughter, James felt something change inside him. This was not about charity or tax deductions. This was about recognizing real talent and giving it a chance to flourish. This was about helping someone who had helped his family when they needed it most. More than that, James was thinking about Emma's future. The doctors had all said that Emma needed time to heal from losing her mother. They said she needed stability and routine and slowly rebuilding her confidence. But what if she also needed music? What if Sarah could become part of Emma's healing process? James had seen tonight that Emma responded to music in a way she had not responded to anything else. She had talked to Sarah, she had laughed. She had learned to play simple notes on the piano. What if this was the beginning of Emma's recovery? What if music lessons with Sarah could help his daughter find joy again? The more James thought about it, the more excited he became. He could offer Sarah a job teaching Emma piano. He could pay her well enough that she would not need to clean hotels anymore. He could help her get back to doing what she clearly loved. But James knew he had to be careful. If he walked down to the lobby right now and offered Sarah a job, she might be suspicious. She might think he was some kind of predator trying to take advantage of her kindness. James needed to approach Sarah slowly. He needed to learn more about her situation. He needed to build trust before he revealed who he really was and what he could offer. James also realized that he needed to be honest with himself about his motives. Yes, he wanted to help Sarah because she had talent and deserved better than cleaning hotels. But mostly he wanted to help her because she had given Emma something precious. For the first time in months, James had seen his daughter smile.
He had heard her laugh.
He had watched her learn something new and feel proud of herself. Sarah had given Emma hope. Now James wanted to give Sarah the same thing. Down in the lobby, Sarah began to shift carefully on the piano bench. Emma was getting heavy and Sarah's arm was falling asleep. But she did not want to wake the little girl. James watched Sarah look around the lobby, probably wondering where Emma's parents were. She looked confused and a little worried. Sarah was clearly a good person who cared about children. She would not just leave Emma alone. James knew he should go down to the lobby soon. Emma needed to go home and sleep in her own bed. And Sarah probably needed to get back to her cleaning work. But James was not ready to end this moment yet. He was not ready to take Emma away from the first person who had been able to comfort her. James made a decision. Tomorrow he would find out everything he could about Sarah, where she lived, what her situation was, why she was working as a cleaner instead of pursuing music. Then he would figure out the best way to approach her. He would offer her a chance to change her life and Emma's life at the same time. James looked down at his daughter sleeping peacefully in Sarah's arms. For the first time since Catherine's death, Emma looked like herself again. She looked like the happy, curious little girl she had been before grief changed everything. "Thank you," James whispered toward the window, even though Sarah could not hear him. "Thank you for giving me my daughter back." James knew that this night was a turning point. Nothing would be the same after this. Emma had found someone who could help her heal. And James had found someone who might be able to help them both remember what joy felt like, all because of a cleaning woman who played piano like an angel and had a heart big enough to comfort a stranger's crying child. James smiled as he headed toward the elevator. Tomorrow he would begin changing Sarah's life the same way she had changed theirs tonight. The next morning, James Richardson sat in his office on the 40th floor of the Richardson Technologies building. Through his huge windows, he could see the entire city spread out below him. But James was not looking at the view. He was thinking about last night. Emma had slept through the entire night for the first time in months. When she woke up, the first thing she said was, "Daddy, can we go see the piano lady again?" James had never seen Emma so excited about anything since Catherine died. She had eaten her breakfast without being asked. She had gotten dressed for school without crying. She had even smiled when James dropped her off at her private school. Now James was trying to focus on work, but his mind kept going back to Sarah. He needed to find out more about her before he made his approach. James called his assistant Margaret into his office. Margaret had worked for him for 10 years. She was smart and careful and very good at finding information. "I need you to do some research for me," James said. "But this is personal, not business. I need complete privacy." Margaret nodded. "Of course, Mr. Richardson, what do you need?" "There's a woman who works for the cleaning company at the Meridian Hotel. Her name is Sarah. I need to know everything about her background, her situation, her family. But I want this done quietly. She must never know anyone is looking into her life." Margaret looked curious but did not ask questions. "I'll get right on it." 3 hours later, Margaret returned with a thick folder. Her face was serious. "This is quite a story, Mr. Richardson," she said, sitting down across from his desk. "Sarah Martinez, age 32. She has an 8-year-old son named Tommy. No husband, no family support." Margaret opened the folder and began reading. She was a student at Juilliard School of Music from 2015 to 2017. Full scholarship. Her professor said she was one of the most talented pianists they had ever taught. James leaned forward. "What happened? Why did she leave?" "She got pregnant in her 3rd year. The father left before the baby was born. Sarah tried to finish school while pregnant, but she couldn't afford childcare and had no family to help. She had to drop out just 6 months before graduation." Margaret continued reading. "Since then, she's worked whatever jobs she could find. House cleaning, restaurant work, retail. She's been at the hotel for 6 months. She also teaches piano lessons in her apartment for $10 per half hour. Where does she live? James asked. A studio apartment in the old part of town. The building has code violations. Heat gets turned off regularly when tenants can't pay bills. She shares one room with her son. James felt his heart sink. The woman who had played so beautifully last night, who had comforted his daughter like an angel, was living in poverty. What about the son's father? James asked. No contact since before the child was born. No child support. Sarah has never tried to find him or ask for money. Margaret closed the folder. Mr. Richardson, this woman is working 3 jobs just to survive. According to my sources, she's currently behind on rent and several utility bills. She's been skipping meals to make sure her son has enough to eat. James was quiet for a long moment. He thought about his huge house with rooms that no one ever used. He thought about Emma's closet full of expensive clothes. He thought about all the money he spent on things that did not matter. Meanwhile, Sarah was sacrificing everything to take care of her son. She was working herself to exhaustion just to pay for basic needs. And somehow she still had enough kindness left to comfort a crying stranger. There's more, Margaret said gently. Sarah's son Tommy is very smart. He tested into the gifted program at his public school. But Sarah can't afford the special supplies and field trips. His teacher says he has the potential to get into excellent colleges someday, but only if he gets the right opportunities. James made his decision. He was not just going to help Sarah. He was going to change her entire life. I want you to cancel my meetings for the rest of the day, James said. I need to go to the Meridian Hotel. Sir, you have the board meeting at 3 o'clock. Reschedule it. This is more important. James spent the rest of the morning planning his approach. He could not just walk up to Sarah and offer her money. She would be suspicious and probably insulted. He needed to meet her as a normal person first, not as a billionaire. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, James drove to the Meridian Hotel. He parked his expensive car 2 blocks away and walked to the hotel. He was wearing simple clothes, jeans, and a plain shirt. He looked like any other guest, not like one of the richest men in the city. James went to the front desk and asked to speak with the hotel manager. I was here last night when my daughter had a difficult moment in the lobby, James explained. One of your cleaning staff helped her. I'd like to thank her personally. The manager looked nervous. Mr. Richardson, I hope you're not upset about our employee playing the piano. It was an unusual situation. I'm not upset at all, James said quickly. I want to thank her. Do you know when she'll be working today? Sarah doesn't start her cleaning shift until 8 tonight. But she teaches piano lessons during the afternoon. I believe she works at a coffee shop in the morning. James got the name of the coffee shop and drove across town. It was a small place in a working-class neighborhood. The kind of place where coffee cost $2 instead of $6, and the customers were construction workers and nurses instead of business executives. James walked inside and looked around. There was Sarah, wearing a brown apron and taking orders behind the counter. She looked tired, but she was smiling at the customers and working quickly. James got in line and waited his turn. When he reached the counter, Sarah looked up at him and smiled. Good afternoon, she said. What can I get for you? Just coffee, please, James said. Black. As Sarah poured his coffee, James studied her face. In the daylight, he could see that she was younger than he had thought. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She was pretty, but in a natural way. No expensive makeup or jewelry. Just a kind face and tired eyes. Here you go, Sarah said, handing him the coffee. That'll be $2.50. James paid and found a seat near the counter. He pretended to read a newspaper while watching Sarah work. She was efficient and friendly with every customer. When an elderly man dropped his change, Sarah quickly came around the counter to help him pick it up. When a mother with a crying baby looked stressed, Sarah brought her a free cookie and played peekaboo with the child until it stopped crying. James could see that Sarah's kindness was real. Last night had not been a special act. This was who she was all the time. At 4 o'clock, Sarah's shift ended. She untied her apron and said goodbye to her co-workers. James followed her outside, staying far enough behind that she would not notice him. Sarah walked to a bus stop and waited. When the bus came, James watched her get on. He quickly got in his car and followed the bus, keeping track of where Sarah went. The bus stopped in front of a rundown apartment building. James watched Sarah get off and walk to the building's entrance. The neighborhood was not dangerous, but it was clearly poor. The buildings were old and needed repairs. There were no trees or parks nearby. James parked across the street and waited. 20 minutes later, Sarah came back out of the building. Now she was with a young boy who looked about 8 years old. This had to be Tommy. James watched Sarah and Tommy walk to a small playground 2 blocks away. The playground equipment was old and rusty, but Tommy ran straight to the swings. Sarah pushed him higher and higher while he laughed with joy. James felt his heart ache watching them. Sarah was clearly a wonderful mother. Despite all her struggles, she was giving her son love and attention. Tommy looked happy and well cared for, even though his clothes were obviously second-hand. After 30 minutes at the playground, Sarah and Tommy walked back toward their building. James saw them stop at a small grocery store. Through the window, he watched Sarah carefully count money before buying a few items. She put everything in one small bag. James realized this was probably dinner for both of them, a few dollars worth of basic food to share. That night, James returned to the Meridian Hotel at 8 o'clock. He waited in the lobby, pretending to read business papers. At 8:30, Sarah arrived for her cleaning shift. She was wearing the same faded uniform from the night before. James watched Sarah get her cleaning cart and begin working. He waited until she was alone in a hallway, then approached her. "Excuse me," he said quietly. Sarah looked up, surprised. "Oh, hello. You're the man from the coffee shop." "Yes," James said. "I'm sorry to bother you at work. My name is James. I wanted to talk to you about last night." Sarah looked confused. "Last night? You helped my daughter, the little girl who was crying in the lobby. You played piano for her." Recognition dawned on Sarah's face. "Emma, is she your daughter? Is she okay?" "She's fine," James said, smiling. "Thanks to you. She slept through the night for the first time in months. This morning she couldn't stop talking about the piano lady." Sarah smiled. "She's a sweet little girl. I'm glad she's feeling better." "I want to thank you properly," James said. "What you did was extraordinary. Emma hasn't been that calm since—" He paused, not sure how much to reveal. "Since her mother died 6 months ago." Sarah's eyes filled with sympathy. "I'm so sorry. I lost my parents when I was young. I know how hard it is." "Emma keeps asking when she can see you again." Sarah stood at the bus stop looking at the piece of paper with James's address written on it. She had looked up the neighborhood online that morning. Houses in Hillcrest sold for millions of dollars. She wondered what James did for work to afford living there. The bus ride took an hour and 15 minutes. Sarah had to transfer twice, and the second bus only came every 30 minutes. She arrived at James's street with 5 minutes to spare. Sarah walked down the tree-lined street, looking at the huge houses behind iron gates. Every house had perfect gardens and expensive cars in the driveways. Sarah felt very small in her old jeans and worn sneakers. When she found James's address, she stopped and stared. The house was enormous. It looked like a mansion from a movie. The front lawn was bigger than the park where she took Tommy to play. Sarah walked up the long driveway, feeling nervous. A fountain splashed in the center of a circular garden. The front door was made of heavy wood with stained glass windows. Sarah rang the doorbell. Soft chimes played inside the house. James opened the door, smiling. He was wearing casual clothes, but Sarah could tell they were expensive. Everything about him seemed polished and perfect. "Sarah, thank you for coming," James said warmly. "Please come in." Sarah stepped into the house and tried not to gasp. The entrance hall had a ceiling 3 stories high. A crystal chandelier hung overhead, almost as beautiful as the one at the hotel. Marble stairs curved up to the second floor. "This is... wow," Sarah said quietly. "Emma is in the music room," James said. "She's been waiting for you all day." James led Sarah through the house. They passed a living room with furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. The kitchen was bigger than Sarah's entire apartment. Everything was clean and perfect and expensive. "Here we are," James said, opening a door. Sarah walked into the music room and stopped breathing. In the center of the room sat a grand piano that was even more beautiful than the one at the hotel. The walls were lined with shelves full of music books. Professional lighting made everything glow softly. "Sarah." Emma jumped up from a chair where she had been waiting. She ran across the room and hugged Sarah around the waist. "Hello, Emma," Sarah said, hugging her back. "How are you feeling today?" "Good," Emma said. "Daddy told me you're going to teach me piano. I'm so excited." Sarah looked around the music room again. There was probably $50,000 worth of equipment in this room. Maybe more. She thought about her own broken piano at home with its sticky keys and wobbly bench. "This is a beautiful piano," Sarah said to James. "It was my wife's," James said quietly. "Catherine was a musician too. Not as talented as you, but she loved to play." Sarah heard the sadness in his voice when he mentioned his wife. She understood now why Emma had been so upset. Losing a mother was one of the hardest things any child could go through. "I'm sure she would want Emma to learn," Sarah said gently. James nodded. "I think so too." Sarah spent the next hour working with Emma. The little girl was eager to learn and had natural musical ability. She remembered everything Sarah taught her and asked good questions. "You're a very smart student," Sarah told Emma. "Have you ever played piano before?" "Mommy tried to teach me a little bit," Emma said, "but then she got sick and couldn't play anymore." Sarah's heart ached for Emma. She knew what it was like to lose someone who loved music. After her parents died, Sarah had not been able to play piano for months. Every song reminded her of them. "Music can help us remember people we love," Sarah said. "When you play piano, part of your mommy will always be with you." Emma smiled. "Really?" "Really." James watched from a chair in the corner of the room. He saw how patient Sarah was with Emma. He saw how she explained things in ways that a 6-year-old could understand. He saw how she encouraged Emma when she made mistakes and celebrated when she got things right. Most importantly, James saw how happy Emma looked. His daughter was giggling and asking questions and having fun. She looked like herself again. When the lesson ended, Emma begged Sarah to stay longer. "Can you play something for me?" Emma asked. "Like you did at the hotel?" Sarah looked at James. "Is that okay?" "Of course," James said. "I'd love to hear you play on a good piano." Sarah sat down at the beautiful grand piano. She ran her fingers over the keys, testing the touch. The sound was incredible, rich and warm and perfectly in tune. Sarah began to play a piece by Debussy. The music filled the room like sunlight. It was gentle and flowing like water over stones. Emma sat on the floor next to the piano, listening with wonder. James closed his eyes and listened. This was the first music that had been played in this room since Catherine died. For months, the piano had sat silent, too painful to touch. Now Sarah was bringing it back to life. When Sarah finished playing, Emma clapped her hands together. "That was so beautiful," Emma said. "I want to learn to play like that." "It takes years of practice," Sarah said. "But if you keep working, you can learn to play anything you want." "Will you keep teaching me?" Emma asked. "If your daddy wants me to," Sarah said. "I definitely want you to," James said quickly. "How often can you come?" Sarah thought about her schedule. Between the coffee shop, the hotel cleaning, and her other students, she barely had any free time. "I could probably come twice a week," Sarah said. "Would that work?" "That would be perfect," James said. "Same time on Tuesday and Friday?" "Yes, that works for me." James walked Sarah to the front door when the lesson was over. "Thank you," he said. "Emma hasn't smiled this much in months." "She's a wonderful little girl," Sarah said. "And she has real musical talent. With the right training, she could become quite good." "I'd like her to have the best training possible," James said. "Whatever it takes," Sarah nodded. "I'll do my best to help her." As Sarah walked back down the long driveway, James watched from the window. He was already planning his next move. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah came to the house twice a week to teach Emma. Each lesson went better than the last. Emma was learning quickly and starting to play simple songs. But James was learning things too. He was learning about Sarah. He noticed that Sarah always wore the same 3 outfits rotated through the week. He noticed that she never ate or drank anything when she came to the house, even when he offered. He noticed that she looked tired and thin. During one lesson, Emma asked Sarah about her own family. "Do you have any children?" Emma asked. "I have a son," Sarah said. "His name is Tommy. He's 8 years old, just like you." "Does he play piano too?" Sarah smiled sadly. "He wants to learn, but I don't have a good piano at home for him to practice on." James filed this information away. Sarah's son wanted to learn piano but could not afford lessons or a decent instrument. After another lesson, James asked Sarah about her background. "Did you study music in college?" he asked. Sarah hesitated. "I went to Juilliard for a while," she said quietly. James tried to hide his surprise. Juilliard was one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. Only the most talented students got accepted there. "What happened?" James asked gently. Why did you leave? Life happened, Sarah said simply. I had Tommy, and I needed to work instead of going to school. James could hear the sadness in her voice. Sarah had given up her dreams to take care of her son. She had sacrificed her future to make sure Tommy had what he needed. Do you ever think about going back? James asked. Sarah laughed, but it was not a happy sound. I'm 32 years old with a child to support. I work 3 jobs just to pay rent. Going back to school is not exactly an option. But you still love music, James said. I do, Sarah said. Teaching Emma reminds me why I fell in love with piano in the first place. Music has the power to heal people, to bring them joy, to help them through difficult times. James nodded. He had seen that power firsthand. Sarah's music had healed his daughter's broken heart. That night, James sat in his study and made a decision. He was going to offer Sarah a chance to change her life completely. But he had to do it carefully. Sarah was proud and independent. She would not accept charity. She would not take money she had not earned. James had to make his offer seem like a business arrangement, not a gift. James also realized that he cared about Sarah as a person, not just as Emma's teacher. She was kind and talented and had overcome incredible challenges. She deserved better than working 3 jobs just to survive. More than that, James was starting to have feelings for Sarah that went beyond gratitude. He admired her strength and her dedication to her son. He was attracted to her gentle spirit and her incredible talent. But James knew he had to be careful about those feelings. Sarah was his employee now. She depended on him for income. He could not take advantage of that relationship. For now, James would focus on helping Sarah professionally. He would create opportunities for her to use her musical talents. He would help her son get the education he deserved. And maybe, if he was very lucky, Sarah would come to care about him too. The next Friday, when Sarah arrived for Emma's lesson, James was ready to begin changing her life forever. 3 weeks after Sarah began teaching Emma, something wonderful happened. Emma asked if she could play a song for her mother. I want to play for Mommy, Emma said during her Friday lesson. Next week is the anniversary of when she went to heaven. My school is having a special concert where kids can play music for people they miss. Sarah looked at James, who was sitting in his usual chair in the corner. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. What song would you like to play? Sarah asked Emma gently. The lullaby you played at the hotel, Emma said. The one that made me stop crying. Sarah spent the entire lesson helping Emma learn a simple version of the Chopin lullaby. Emma worked harder than she had ever worked before. Her small fingers moved carefully across the keys, trying to make each note perfect. By the end of the lesson, Emma could play the melody with one hand. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. That's perfect, Emma, Sarah said. Your mother would be so proud of you. After Emma went upstairs to get ready for dinner, James asked Sarah to stay for a few more minutes. I need to tell you something, James said, closing the music room door. I haven't been completely honest with you about who I am. Sarah felt her stomach drop. What do you mean? James took a deep breath. My full name is James Richardson. I own Richardson Technologies. Sarah stared at him. Everyone knew Richardson Technologies. It was one of the biggest companies in the world. James Richardson was one of the richest men alive. You're that James Richardson? Sarah whispered. Yes, James said. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I wanted you to get to know me as Emma's father first, not as a businessman. Sarah felt dizzy. She sat down heavily on the piano bench. Why are you telling me this now? Because I want to offer you something, James said. And I need you to understand that I can afford to make this offer. Sarah looked at him suspiciously. What kind of offer? James sat down in the chair across from her. Sarah, you are incredibly talented. You should be performing in concert halls, not cleaning hotel bathrooms. I want to help you get back to the career you were meant to have. I don't understand, Sarah said. I want to hire you as Emma's full-time music teacher and companion, James said. You would work for me exclusively. No more coffee shop, no more cleaning job, just music and helping Emma heal. Sarah shook her head. I can't afford to give up my other jobs. I have bills to pay, rent to cover. I'll pay you enough that you won't need other jobs, James said. $200,000 a year. Sarah's mouth fell open. That's impossible. No one pays that much for piano lessons. I'm not just paying for piano lessons, James said. I'm paying for what you've given Emma. For the first time since her mother died, my daughter is happy. She's healing. That's worth more to me than money. Sarah stood up and began pacing around the room. This is crazy. I can't take that much money from you. Why not? James asked. Because I haven't earned it. Because it's too much. Because I don't understand why you would do this. James stood up too. Sarah, let me explain something. 6 months ago, I would have paid any amount of money to help Emma. I hired the best doctors, the most expensive therapists. I spent hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to fix her sadness. None of it worked. James walked to the piano and touched the keys gently. Then you came along. You helped Emma in 30 minutes for free. You gave her something that all my money couldn't buy. You gave her hope. Sarah was quiet, listening. But it's not just about Emma, James continued. I've watched you these past few weeks. You're working yourself to death. You're exhausted, you're thin, you're struggling to pay bills. Meanwhile, you have a gift that could bring joy to thousands of people. James turned to face Sarah. I want to give you a chance to use that gift. I want to help you record an album. I want to arrange concerts for you. I want the world to hear you play. Sarah felt tears beginning to form in her eyes. James, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't accept charity. This isn't charity, James said firmly. This is business. You have something I need. The ability to help my daughter heal. I have something you need. The resources to help you pursue your dreams. We can help each other. Sarah was quiet for a long moment. What about Tommy? I can't leave him alone while I travel to concerts. Bring him with you, James said. Or better yet, let me help him too. I know he's gifted. I can get him into the best schools, help him with college someday. Your son deserves the same opportunities that rich kids get. Sarah started crying then. Not sad tears, but overwhelmed tears. For 8 years, she had worked multiple jobs just to survive. She had given up her dreams to take care of Tommy. She had never imagined that life could be different. I need time to think, Sarah said. Of course, James said. Take all the time you need. The next week, Emma performed at her school concert. Sarah sat in the audience next to James, watching Emma play the Chopin lullaby on the small school piano. Emma's playing was simple but heartfelt. When she finished, she looked up at the ceiling and whispered, I love you, Mommy. There was not a dry eye in the auditorium. After the concert, Emma ran to Sarah and hugged her tight. Did I do good? Emma asked. You did perfectly, Sarah said. Your mother heard every note. James watched this interaction and knew that his offer had been the right thing to do. Sarah and Emma belonged together. Sarah had become like a second mother to Emma, and Emma had given Sarah's life new purpose. That evening, Sarah called James and accepted his offer. But I have one condition, Sarah said. I want to keep teaching other children too. Kids whose parents can't afford expensive lessons. I want to use some of the money you pay me to give free lessons to children who need them. James smiled. I think that's a wonderful idea. 6 months later, Sarah gave her first professional concert in over a decade. The venue was Carnegie Hall in New York City. The same concert hall where she had dreamed of playing when she was a student at Juilliard. Emma sat in the front row wearing a beautiful dress and holding a bouquet of flowers for Sarah. Next to Emma sat Tommy, who was now taking piano lessons himself and loving every minute of it. James sat next to the children, watching Sarah play with tears of pride in his eyes. She was wearing an elegant black gown and playing a full-sized concert grand piano. The music she created was extraordinary. During intermission, a music critic from the New York Times came up to James. Where has this pianist been hiding? The critic asked. She's incredible. This is some of the most beautiful playing I've heard in years. James smiled. She's been cleaning hotel bathrooms and serving coffee, he said. Sometimes the most talented people are hiding in plain sight. The critic looked shocked. You're serious? Completely serious, James said. Life doesn't always give talented people the opportunities they deserve. Sometimes they need someone to believe in them and give them a chance. When the concert ended, the audience gave Sarah a standing ovation that lasted for 5 minutes. People were crying. They were cheering. They knew they had witnessed something special. Sarah took her bow and looked out at the audience. She saw Emma and Tommy clapping and smiling. She saw James standing and applauding with tears streaming down his face. She saw hundreds of strangers who had been moved by her music. For the first time in over a decade, Sarah felt like herself again. Not a struggling single mother, Not a woman who cleaned toilets for minimum wage, but a pianist, a musician, an artist. After the concert, Sarah was surrounded by people wanting to congratulate her. Record producers offered her contracts. Concert halls wanted to book her for future performances. Music magazines wanted to interview her. But the moment Sarah treasured most was when Emma ran up to her backstage. "Sarah, you were amazing," Emma said, throwing her arms around Sarah's waist. "You sounded like an angel." "Thank you, sweetheart," Sarah said, hugging Emma tight. "This concert happened because of you." "Because of me?" Emma asked, confused. "If you hadn't been crying in that hotel lobby, I never would have played piano that night. I never would have met your daddy. None of this would have happened." Emma smiled. "So we helped each other?" "We helped each other," Sarah agreed. "Tommy came running over too. Mom, everyone was crying during your music. It was so beautiful." Sarah knelt down and hugged both children. 6 months ago, she had been working 3 jobs and could barely pay rent. Tonight she had performed at Carnegie Hall and received multiple recording offers. But the most important thing was not the money or the fame. The most important thing was that she had found her way back to music. She had found a way to use her gift to bring joy to others. James approached them quietly. "Sarah, there are some people here who want to talk to you about future concerts." Sarah stood up and smoothed her dress. "Give me 5 more minutes with the kids and then I'll be ready." As Sarah talked with Emma and Tommy about the concert, James watched her with admiration. She had gone from cleaning woman to concert pianist in 6 months. But more than that, she had become part of his family. Emma called Sarah her music mommy now. Tommy looked up to James like a father figure. And James had fallen in love with Sarah's strength, her talent, and her gentle heart. They had not talked about their personal feelings yet. Both were being careful because of Emma and Tommy.